I think it
No, no, we can record. I just clicked it, so we're
ah,
recording now.
that's interesting because okay, so probably I can also record at the same time.
Yeah, maybe. So anyway, yeah, I wanted to talk about workflow with GitHub.
Yeah.
Manfred and I talked about this the other day, and I uploaded a video. Did you happen to see it? No.
No.
Yeah. Okay. So, but that's fine because like this will cover some of the same ground, but that was in like a much longer video, and we only sort of focused on GitHub workflow. So we talked about this, I think, a couple months ago when we met in person here in Vienna. But I just want to go over it again. So. So basically, we have this kind of in theory right now, following the C4 process.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we just like barely looked into it that day when we were together. So I'm not sure like how sort of familiar that really is for you.
I didn't read through it in the end. I just what we talked about quickly.
Yeah. So like it's basically so simple that, that it almost doesn't require reading. The document is so short, but like the nutshell, really the only thing that matters for our purposes is that there should really be just one branch in any of these repositories in the bisq-network org, and that one branch is master. And now there might be exceptions. I'm not saying like never, ever, ever, or something like that, but like as a rule, just like a hard prohibition on topic branches or feature branches, and where then virtually everything that happens of any importance is happening in a fork. So and happening in your fork of the Exchange repository, and then you're issuing pull requests, right? And that's a workflow. It's a pretty massive workflow change for Manfred for sure, and there's when you're coming along, you're fixing a typo, and you don't want all this overhead and so on. Anybody who's a maintainer of the repository, right? So Manfred's got those rights. I've got those rights. I would still, jam a typo fix in there or something like that if I was, a quick one-line addition to the README or change a link or something like that. So there's definitely some threshold here. But basically, if you're not a maintainer of that repository, then you shouldn't be. Basically, you can't push anything to it. I think you must have rights, right? Because you've been pushing the UI improvements branch.
I don't know. I always only did pull requests.
Okay, but you've been doing pull requests into development.
Branch,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this basically all creates a bunch of complexity doing it this way, and one of the complexities is that it's just like those issues that you were closing out the other day. It's like this work will be done when the UI improvements branch is merged into the development branch, which is then merged into the master branch, and all of that stuff. And that's like the benefit of this approach. Is it just and by the way, if this is like totally obvious, I'm just saying it for the purpose of the recording as well. That's the benefit of the C4 process is that it just completely eliminates that complexity, and it trades it off for a different kind of complexity. But the theory here, or the experiment that we want to see play out, see how it actually goes, is that the complexity that we're trading off for here is better, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So, forgive me because I haven't been following the UI improvement stuff closely. You may be already doing this stuff, but it's probably just worth kind of like laying it out here again for everybody's benefit, which is that. So let's just think about like a day in the life, or a feature in the life, or a week in the life, or whatever. You're focused on essentially improving Bisq's UI UX, right? Like we just saw, you added whole host of issues about this that look like they're the right kind of granularity just at a glance. It's really like, hey, let's make sure that we focus on the first field that a person should be entering input into when they click on that screen. Just focus the cursor into that field. Like really this micro stuff that is a discrete change that could be made, that could be issued as a pull request, that probably isn't going to have like 19 different classes changing and all sorts of conflicts and stuff like that, right? So that's already like perfect.
Yeah, I think I think how this whole UI branch was created is when I started going through the code. I did CSS refactoring, and that touched lots of classes. And I think it was just too much to overlook for Manfred at that point of time. And it would be huge for testing if you have to go through again as a maintainer through all these tests, and that's how this happened. And then more and more was crammed into this branch, and I think now it's even off from development quite a bit. So we now have this merge issues as well. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. So I totally agree with you that we should focus on having smaller commits, also smaller pull requests to the master branch, which would help that compared if you run a development branch besides that everyone who is creating pull requests maybe testing their stuff even more before creating a pull request, because you're aware of that this might be shipped in the next version.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm getting to here is that back to this trade-off, this complexity trade-off, is that it puts all of the complexity on you, the contributor who's about to issue a pull request, right? So if you're working on some unit of work, right? Whether it's that focus, the cursor in the input field or whatever, or something like much more comprehensive. It doesn't matter. Like you get to choose the level of granularity because it's going to be 100% on you to put together a pull request that does in fact get merged, right? Mm-hmm. So like there's certain requirements on the maintainer. Like the maintainer has a role as well, and we haven't defined that perfectly yet. But basically, the rule should be something like this: if it's a correct pull request, it's going to get merged. Mm-hmm. And okay, so we have to define what correct means, and we'll get to that. We haven't done that for our own purposes yet. But in the 0MQ community, where all of this comes from, right, where like C4 was born from, correct really meant something very rigorous and very technical, right? Like it doesn't reduce test coverage. It is formatted correctly. It has a correct comment. It follows the style guidelines and things like that, and isn't obviously crazy. Like the change isn't like delete everything or just like something like insane. Mm-hmm. Then Peter Hinchins, the maintainer there, who just merge, right? Because there's way too much going on. He couldn't actually line by line check every single thing that everybody was doing. And so he took this radical position. And again, I don't know if this is going to be right for us, but just by example, right? He took this radical position that basically, if you submit a pull request, I'm going to merge it, so long as it's correct and not totally crazy, right? And his philosophy there was, and I think we talked about this before as well, like that perfection precludes participation, right? And so he knew that, like, yeah, by eagerly clicking merge, there's probably going to be stuff getting in that's somehow wrong or somehow off. But the fact that it's sitting there on master, the fact that it is inexorably heading toward the next release, right, creates all kinds of not just pressure, but opportunity, right, for people to discover it in the first place, to see like, that's jacked, that doesn't make any sense, that's going to never work or whatever, mm-hmm. and to fix it, right? And that's just another opportunity to participate, another opportunity to contribute that probably never would have happened if those changes were like squirreled away in a branch somewhere, where just like only 2 people have any awareness of it. So like for me, I've started running I've started running bisq right from master, right? Which is like maybe a little bit dangerous, but I'm watching, keeping an eye on what's happening, and I'm running right from master. And I started doing that because somebody issued a pull request to improve how arbitration chat messages work, right? This little bounty that I put out there. And I wanted that so bad, to be able to hit Command Enter to get my arbitration messages sent. I just started running from master, and that's actually until that is proven to me to be a terrible idea or something like that. That's what I intend to keep doing. especially while we don't have all the tests that we want. So you know, again, there's a risk there, but like I'm willing to sort of be a canary for us, and anybody else who's just in Bisq all day long. That can help to be a check and a balance on this process of just like, let's get stuff in the master, and let's get more and more and more rigorous about the granularity of our pull requests and the speed with which Manfred or myself or whomever is wearing the maintainer role in the future merges them. So I'll just rewind a little bit and come back to the complexity that I was talking about. So it's basically all on you as the contributor, right? To decide the granularity, to make sure that it's correct, again, as we define exactly what that means. But definitely part of the definition of correct is that it will merge cleanly at the time that you're issuing the pull request. So that, and this is the main complexity trade-off, is that it's 100% on you, the contributor, to make sure that your branch is up to date with master, right? So you're merging master in at whatever, you know, sort of frequency makes sense for you. Certainly you're doing it before you submit your pull request. But if that pull request is getting stale now, right? You know, like, hey, for whatever reason, the maintainer hasn't gotten to it. You know, okay, you're merging again, right? It's I mean, we can figure out what the kind of trade-off of the responsibilities is there, or in whose, you know, who does the burden lie with there? Because at some point, basically a maintainer is not doing their job if they're unable to merge in a timely fashion. Right? Like I think it's really instructive to look at how Bitcoin Core works here, the core process works, is when you look at their maintainers, I'm not even sure if there's plural maintainers, but definitely the one, Vladimir is his name. You know, you'd think that he has just like outsized power and control over the Bitcoin repository, but he really doesn't. Like really, I mean, I don't know him. I can't tell you what happens in a day, but I know that what he does primarily with regard to the Bitcoin repository is he hits the merge button, right? And he does that not just Peter Hinchin style, like, hey, let's see what happens, right? He does that in a much more rigorous way, which is based on this ACK stuff. I don't know if you've ever seen Bitcoin Core pull requests.
No.
But ACK, like, you know, kind of like in, you know, TCP protocol kind of stuff, like ACK, like acknowledged. Or NAC, like not acknowledged, or I do not agree with this change. And they've developed this whole system of hang on just one second. Yeah. They've developed this whole system of ACK and NAC, and even like variations on it, like concept ACK, or like I acknowledge this. Like I'm okay with this change, but I haven't personally tested it, right? So I acknowledge that this is a good idea, but only in concept. I haven't looked at the code. I haven't reviewed it, right? So they have all these variations on it. And basically what happens in Bitcoin Core is somebody issues a pull request, and then it sits there until some kind of quorum of ACKs shows up, until there's rough consensus that this is a good idea. And then it's Vladimir's job, or whomever's playing the role of maintainer, to hit the merge button, right? So this is all like the right sort of checks and balances.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So you're talking about with ACK and NAC, just comments under the pull request?
Yeah, they're just comments. So they're just individual contributors to Bitcoin Core, just coming along and using this kind of like, you know, just emergent text-based protocol for reviewing, right? And so I think probably our sweet spot is somewhere in the middle of those two, because we don't have the kind of community right now that Bitcoin Core does, where, you know, you have literally dozens of people participating that are doing these ACKs and NACKs and so on. We don't have that. We don't have time for that. We don't have the people for that yet. But what we want to have is the process in place that can seamlessly scale up to that. So the foundation of that is that everything's a pull request, and that everything's a pull request in the master. And then if we have basically a more benevolent dictator style maintainer in Manfred right now, saying like, basically, I, the maintainer, am the arbiter of, ACKs and NACKs. I say whether it goes. That's fine and appropriate for now. But then, as more people are able to do that kind of review, Manfred can take more and more of the back seat and just wait for consensus to emerge, and then actually do the merging, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I see.
I just posted from the README.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. So was that in Bitcoin's README?
Yeah, Bitcoin. Yeah, just saw it in a pull request.
Killer. Yeah. That's great. So I think we can sort of evolve toward that. But in the meantime, that's really the main point. It sounds like all of this is tracking perfectly well, but the main point is, let's get everything. Let's blow away every single one of these topic branches. I've already talked to Manfred about this. We weren't quite ready to get rid of development. Basically, planned to rename it to integration. But really the reason for that is because of the work that he's been doing on the DAO and the work that you've been doing on UI improvements. And so I guess maybe I'll just turn it over to you. Like what's the state of that branch, and what do you think the most aggressive thing that we could do right now to eliminate the need for that branch is?
Yeah. So in my opinion, it would be already okay and great if we merge it down to development at least. So I use the UI development branch, or I'm creating feature branches based on the UI development branch all the time. And not everything that I will plan to change, but lots of stuff is already dependent on that. So it would be hard to implement, to cherry pick all this stuff and then make pull requests on the master branch. So it would be great to go down to development and
so development got merged, just a week ago into master in order to release 0.6.3. So what's really the delta now between?
Maybe we can even merge it to master. Maybe we can merge it even down to master. So I can recheck. At least for now, I didn't find any obvious. So I'm testing around, and I didn't find anything obvious that is broken. So it's mainly UI stuff that changed, and also lots of stuff that it's not huge improvements, but it's stuff like the automatic tooltip for truncation tables, which helps already for all languages that we support, because most of them are truncated, have truncated labels.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I already forgot. I've made quite a lot of changes in the branch. Yeah, actually, we could talk to Manfred, but from my point, there's nothing really that holds us back, in my opinion at least, to even merge down to master already.
Okay. Yeah. And the stuff that you would work on today, I don't know what your priorities are, but just say that focus on the input thing, just for an example.
Yeah.
Is that also dependent on what's sitting in that branch?
The input stuff wouldn't be dependent, but the input stuff would be something that could be done directly as a pull request to master.
Okay. Yeah. Just a thought. I mean, you tell me, but maybe just over the next day or two, while Manfred's getting back in action, maybe we just leave that branch alone, double check with him, make sure we're okay with kind of one big merge, and then in the meantime, spin up some of these maybe fun, simple, easy, items, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Regarding plan, I'm still working on getting all the issues out based on the feedback we received in the Pig prototype or on Slack discussions. So will take some time to do that. And do you know? So Manfred is now moving back to his location, or?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure the details. I know he's traveling, but and isn't going to be sort of available to do much of anything coding wise until the weekend. I'm not sure when on the weekend either.
Yeah, so for sure, I can do enough stuff, either be development directly to master.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I'm working also concept-wise. There will be a lot of mockups to be created for a new workflow for onboarding users and for new exchange system.
Nice.
So I'm not blocked.
Okay.
This branch is not merged into master this week.
Cool. Okay. So last thought then maybe is with regard to all of these issues that you're creating they're all of a piece, right? Like you're basically working on UI improvements. I just want to open up the possibility of using GitHub's projects boards for this.
Mm-hmm.
Because and maybe this isn't necessary or desired or whatever, but the way that we've got the board now, I don't know if you've looked at ZenHub at all lately.
Yeah, although I didn't look lately, but the last time, yeah.
Yeah, it's been. Here, let me just try to share my screen. Tell me if you can see this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one sec. So yeah, the columns have changed pretty significantly, with a real focus on simplicity and I won't do the full tour now. I'm going to record a video later. Tries to walk through it, but what do I want to focus on here? So basically, the biggest change is this priorities column, and I think you and I even talked about that, kind of cribbing from the way that ZenHub's own support works. ZenHub's own use of their own product is a little bit what I'm basing this on. But I really like this idea of a column that's all about priorities, because it's just a way of keeping ourselves honest, right? There's really only a few of us working in any kind of dedicated way. So if we see, if this is just a giant list, we're just lying to ourselves. And basically anything that's not in this list, it isn't in this list or isn't in progress, for the sort of dedicated small group of contributors, well, you probably shouldn't be working on anything else. I mean, this definitely reflects like these major important things like fix timeout bug, find better ways to deal with blockchain congestion, recruit developers, right? Like this is, hugely important stuff. And so that's why what you see at the top are all epics, roughly in their order of actual importance. And then below that are all issues, with very few exceptions, that are part of those epics. So, this is what we're in the middle of iterating on right now, is figuring out how to fix these dropped transaction broadcasts. And that's ultimately part of this fix timeouts epic, because that's kind of the root problem, is we have transactions timing out and it's causing these cascading effects, right? So if I narrow down on that, that's a really good reflection now of exactly what's happening. We're definitely tracking these timeout issues. That's actually in progress. I'm in the middle of doing a whole bunch of reimbursements, which is its own sub epic, right? Because that has a whole gang of issues along with it for every reimbursement, and so on and so forth, right? And so what I want to just touch on here is that if you want to have I'm not sure what we have, like UI, a kind of epic that's about UI improvements. I don't know if it makes sense to do it as an epic, or if it just, this is just kind of like.
Regarding UI improvements, I'm not sure if it really makes sense to put it as an epic, because we will never be finished with that.
Yeah, exactly what I was just going to say. So so, we have this role here, UI developer, you're more or less playing that role at the moment. So, that might be something you actually want to kind of assign to you, and you can play that role and one day hand it off to somebody or whatever, or just keep doing it. Right. So even if there's not an epic, which is totally fine because there's just ongoing forever going to be work like that. You can still either think about getting things into this priority column, marking stuff as in progress, and this, you could think about doing this as a projects board inside of the Exchange repository, if you like as well. That might somehow help you with workflow. I'm not necessarily recommending this, but like I've started to do it in at least one case with support, with all these reimbursements. I actually have a project set up for that. Even though support is linked into ZenHub, I have a project set up for that because the workflow is really different. Like it needs a specific workflow, what it means to stage a reimbursements and ones that I'm waiting for info on. I don't want to pollute the master DAO board with these other distinctions, right? So mostly I'm not really tracking these a lot on the main board. These are all just kind of sitting in the discussion column with no further management over there. But this is where I actually do my work, and I just kind of burn down through it. And it's not so important from the big board. What's important from the big board's perspective is this. Like I'm in the middle of doing this issue. That's what Chris is doing, right? And then there's all this lower level stuff. Yeah. So in general, of course, it would make sense that everyone is working with the same board. So we are tracking the progress of all the tasks properly. If we would use ZenHub, is this ZenHub? No, this is that we're looking at now. Yeah. So if you would use ZenHub, do I have already permissions to use it actually? To see, also to change stuff or add, move around stories in this. Yeah, that is the one challenge. So that's in the Exchange. There will be the Exchange repo. So if I switch. Yeah. So I created an issue about this, and this is like really unfortunate. But the way that ZenHub's permissions work, which are fundamentally just based on GitHub's permissions, is it if you don't have write access to a repository, then you can't drag issues across or change their pipeline or whatever. And so I think what makes sense here, it's just unfortunate. It's just not perfect. But what probably makes sense is to give write access to people who are actually in a bonded role, actually working in a dedicated way, and so on. It's just that it's really easy then to accidentally start committing to that repository. So as long as you're sort of in the proper fork and pull request mode, then you just sort of nominally have write access just to move issues around. So that would be great, because also also what I'm not because as soon as I'm finished with all this UI task, I wanted to do some prioritization, and that would enable me. And the other thing that would help is, I think if you have write access, I can also select labels like UI. Yeah. So at the moment I can't do anything. So I'm just added also this improvement just within the title. Yeah. Which could easily be replaced by labels. You know what? Actually, we might have a solution to this though. Let me just check something. Actually, we'll go. Yeah, like if we go to Exchange settings and we say branches, if we make master a protected branch, and master is the only branch, right? Then Require pull requests before merging. Restrict who can push to this branch. Yeah. So then we can make it.
They can give write access and just give it to you and Manfred.
Yeah, exactly. Who can push to this branch become only the maintainers. Yeah, that's interesting. And then everybody else can have write access. That's good. That's really good. Let's try that.
Yeah,
let's try that. So and you already have admin access to growth, so you can change stuff there. You'll have write access to Exchange. Is there anything else that you obviously need right now?
No, that would be sufficient. So I already have the Exchange board in front of me of ZenHub.
Yeah. Yeah. I recommend, well, no, it's your call, right? I can just tell you what I'm doing. My workflow is a little different than yours, but I'm always looking at it as the DAO, right? And that's like it's like really intentionally that it's named that. This is the bisq-network DAO, right? Like this is a view on it, one board to encompass everything that's happening inside of the DAO. So because all of the
repos are checked, okay.
Yeah, they're all linked together anyway, right? So one like nice hack here is the cookies in ZenHub remember your settings. So if you go to the DAO board and you click show all, so they're like all checked, then it'll always be that way unless you change those settings. But then if you go here, right, and you say like switch the repository to Exchange, and now you're looking at the Exchange board, or you're looking at the same board but through the sort of view.
I just recognized you're using a ZenHub plugin, don't you?
Yes.
Okay, that's why you see it in GitHub. I was confused in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, are you looking at this, like this, the fact that this is called ZenHub, or are you looking at it that I have this browser plugin here?
Yeah, the browser plugin. Also, because I just so that you're in the github.com domain and you had the view, the ZenHub view, right in the GitHub.
Yeah, that's the only way. There is no ZenHub app. It's only this plugin that just natively integrates with the GitHub UI, or modifies the GitHub UI. So if I switch over to viewing the board through the Exchange, they're still all linked together. But if I just click show one, then the only thing that's checked is the repo that I'm sort of focused on here, like since I'm looking at it that way. And then what's cool is you can toggle back and forth between them. So if I go back to the DAO and click on its boards, it's going to have all the boards linked together again, just because the cookies remember the settings, right? So maybe that's of use, right? Maybe kind of in Exchange mode, you just see that. And with regard to prioritizing, meaning I assume like ordering the issues. Is that what you mean, like ordering in the columns?
Yeah. I will. Sorry, can you repeat what the question was?
I was just asking you to clarify what you meant by prioritizing. Does that mean just the order?
Just the order of the UI task that I want to tackle.
Yeah.
So basically, I create all the issues. I also relink it in the Slack channel for discussions. Some of them might not have any need to discuss, but lots of them even might be big changes in the UI. So would need more discussion. And just depending on the interaction, I would always also then update and just move the smaller, easier task maybe just to the front and work them, and just to have a regular process and communication, documentation for these issues.
So if you're thinking about like kind of the order of these issues, right? Yeah. Of course, you would add UI, like you said, to all of them. Yeah, that would be great, right? If you process the inbox for any UI related issues,
yeah,
and the purpose of inbox is really just triage. Like I'm trying to get to this place where basically things don't live in the inbox at all just long enough to look at and go like, this is bogus, or this belongs in a different repository. Always want to be thinking about that. Like you'll see me like moving stuff into the support repository now, if it's like just a question that somebody has or whatever. So, you can think about that. You can add the label, but that discussion column is really a very intentionally a big grab bag, right? It's like, okay, if this is a valid enough issue to continue existing, right? We're not just going to close it out of hand. And you should just close stuff if it's sort of your purview. It's a UI related thing. I mean, the way to think about this is we're really designating you as a kind of issue maintainer for this repository, right? It's not ideal that all this stuff lives in one place. The super ideal thing would be that the UI is on its own, and then you could just be the maintainer, right? But since Manfred's not going to have time to do this and so on, you can sort of manage the issues, add UI, move them into discussion, whatever. And yeah, you decide what the priority is. You keep stuff going, and we'll just.
So moving to discussion, you mean is for every task that is not ready to be pushed, moved into priorities, to have some priority that needs more discussion, would end in discussion?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not exactly sure precisely what the answer is. What I do know is that the meaning of the word priority, as I'm intending it here, is these are high priorities for bisq DAO, right? Like, not when we get to this stuff, this is the priority order in which we'd like to get to it, but rather, this is the shit we're actually doing right now because it's actually a priority. And in the case of like UI development, you're actually doing that. That's actually your priority, right? So like, feel free to move things into that column that are actually priorities, not just the order in which you'd like to get to them if somebody ever gets to them. So a good test here is it assigned, right? I think the semantics of assignment here, like, there shouldn't be a whole lot of stuff in the priorities column that doesn't have an assignee, right? So don't just assign everything to yourself and then move it all over into the priorities column and sort of create this false view on the world, right? But rather, like, I think you see where we have it in there, there's already plenty of issues with me and Manfred's face on it, but it does actually reflect the things that I am actively toggling through. Stuff goes from priorities to in progress and back fairly frequently lately, because I'm actually working on those things. So feel free to priority order the stuff in the discussion column as well. Just kind of like sort the, filter by the UI label or whatever, and move things around. And I'll make a mental note to myself to try not to disrupt that. Like I won't try to do any sorting in and amongst the UI issues myself, right? I don't know. Is that a clear enough distinction?
Yeah. So for now, so the only question for me is still, so let's say I've put lots of these issues as kind of inbox issues, which are at the moment, and now the question is, all of them would move to discussion if they're not concrete enough for implementation. So if we have a regular Kanban board, you have the inbox, maybe ready for development,
right?
In development. So, and in development or in progress, we do have the column, and
yeah, I see the question that you're asking. So this is what I think we should use bounties for. Is if you've got an issue that it's not just a discussion anymore. It's clear. It's like, yes, we want to do this. Yes, there's enough. It's clear enough that it could be worked on. But it is not me, Christoph Atenedo's priority right now to work on it. I have other priorities. So I'm making this a bounty, right? And opening it up that anybody who can come along, potentially including myself, right, can come and take it. But bounty in this sense basically means shovel-ready work, right? It's like the test for me is I would never want to put BSQ bounty on something that somebody comes along and I now need to spend an unbounded amount of time talking and discussing how to do that work with that person. So, but if it's already clear enough or just like the sort of well-sized enough that it doesn't need a lot of explanation, like focus the cursor in this field or whatever, then that's just perfect, right? And the more of that we have, the better. And you can consider adding this good first issue stuff as well. If it's like really, really trivial, yeah, exactly. So I think to sum up, I think bounties can kind of play that ready for development role. Do you think that makes sense?
So I would do it then now, as I would move all the issues I've created into discussion, the discussion column, as all of them could be and are up for discussions, besides small stuff like, for example, the cursor, which is kind of a no-brainer, or not a no-brainer. It could also be up for discussion, of course. So if I have small tasks, I move them. I try to define them as properly as possible to move them into the bounty column and give the bounty label as we do want to have lots of bounties out there. In the end, we just take them ourselves if no one is taking them, which is also fine.
Yeah.
And if a task is more complex and it might be more work to define than to just to do it, then I would, and there's no need to discussion anymore, for example, then I would just move it into a priorities column for prioritization. And then, of course, when I'm starting working on it, I'm moving the issue into progress.
Yeah.
And hopefully close.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that sounds good to me. I mean, the only or one gap that I see there in potential workflow gap is that those items that are like, bigger items or more ambiguous, it's not the kind of thing that's going to be a well-defined bounty. It's not a priority for you right now, though, for you personally. It might benefit from a little more discussion, but it also might not. It's like, hey, when I can get to this, I'm going to get to this. There's not really a column that represents that right now. Like this would be the backlog column or the icebox column, and it's a Kanban board, right? And I eliminated those for a reason. Just really putting it all into discussion. We'll see if this works, because I think what you could do, I think what naturally maps onto that use case is that you assign yourself to that issue, right? Still sitting in discussion. And discussion here kind of means it's open for discussion when this is going to become a priority, right? It's loose semantics around discussion here. But it's got your face on it. So anybody who's coming along like, oh, what's the status of this? Well, it's clear who you'd at least talk to about it. You're definitely going to get notified and all of that stuff. Okay,
or maybe for me personally, maybe I don't need even the priorities column at all, because at the moment, at least for the UI stuff, I'm not sure if there's, so how you're using the priorities column to have an overview or to give people an overview if this would be accessible to everyone, what the priorities are for bisq at the moment?
And it is accessible to everybody, and that's definitely a big goal. I haven't sort of done a lot of communication about this yet, but I very much intend to. I intend to actually start recording a series of. I'm going to call it something like the DAO operations video series, right, where I'll do like 10, 15, 20-minute videos that go through each piece of infrastructure, right, like this board. And that's precisely the design. It's like really even an uninitiated person should be able to come into this board with just a bit of a primer on it that tells them the priorities column reflects the priorities of the bisq DAO, the sort of most dedicated people working on it, right?
Then it makes sense. Okay, but maybe I would add epics like improve first-time user experience.
Yeah,
for example,
it's great.
Which would be connected to lots of issues.
That's right. I would say don't hesitate to do that. To have an epic in there, right? Epics are long-lived. They shouldn't be infinitely lived, right? Like, UI improvements would be a bad epic, but if you think it's well enough bounded to say improve the first-time user experience or whatever, and it really does reflect this thing. There's a reason that you're working on this stuff, right? You actually are driving at a certain kind of goal, right? So I think that's good, and it also shows like how I want to position this to everybody is like, look, there's only so many things in this priorities column because there's only so many people waking up every morning and thinking about bisq. So it would be a shame actually to not have your face in there and something that captures what it is that you're waking up and thinking about every morning like a priority. So I'm actually very happy to have an epic there, and then you can choose, whether or not you want to add each and every issue to that epic. I am tending to do that, right? Like with everything that we do regarding sort of developer outreach, I'm adding these as issues for sure, and there's a growing number of them, right? Like I'm including the roles that we're looking to fill, the developer roles we're looking to fill for one, and then across all the different kind of channels and repositories. Some writing that I want to do, these tech sessions that we want to do, reaching out at FOSDEM. So, this can be a really, really rich way for people to just self-discover and figure all this stuff out. It requires a bit of management. If you're happy to do that, I'm very, very happy to have you do it.
Okay, yeah. Then let's do it that way. Also, as soon as I have writing permissions, I will try. First, I'm finishing off all the issues, and then I will try to clean up and get some kind of prioritization and moving the issues around the columns. And maybe we can go through them just quickly to get your feedback. What do you think?
Yeah, it sounds good. Just two more things real quick. One is, why are these all caps? Versus these things down here, it's basically epics that are like these priority epics. I'm putting in all caps just as this additional level of really important thing, right? Just your eye sort of gets drawn to that just because it's all caps. So I am actually intentionally shouting there, so you can follow suit if you like. And the second thing is, and I imagine you're already doing this. Sorry if this is just a total repeat for you. But when you issue pull requests into the Exchange repository, into master, please do make sure that you're coming from some kind of topic branch. Don't just merge from master. Or sorry, don't just issue your pull request from your own master branch. Is that obvious why?
What do you mean exactly? So if you mean when I'm having an issue, I want to fix it. I fork the master branch. I'm making the change. I make a pull request. Compare against the upstream master branch. And create a pull request, or is what do you mean exactly? I didn't follow.
It's a commonly when people are in a fork and pull request kind of model, and you see this in Exchange all the time, is that people come along like they want to add a new coin, right? And they issue the pull request from their fork's master branch into our repository's master branch, which works, but it's not ideal. Better is whenever you're issuing a pull request from your fork, that it's coming from a branch, from a non-master branch.
Okay. What's the advantage of that?
Yeah, the advantage is that if that pull request doesn't get merged right away for some reason, which is likely, then you're safe, right? Because you've got that branch, feature foo, sitting in your repository, clearly linked to that pull request. And now you can go create another pull request from master, right? From a clean master that's up to date with the upstream.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, cool. Let me just kill my screen share. I just want to see if I have one other thing. What was the thing? Yeah. Let's see. We can go. I don't have to go through all these things, but there's just some style issues, and I'll write these up. Like things like use lowercase and dashes for branch names. Like Manfred has been doing camel case, but it's not conventional. I think do that anyway. Try to keep branch names relatively short. And then like referencing commits. I know you have been doing that in some cases, at least. It's an open question exactly when and where we want to do, sorry, not referencing commits, but referencing issues. Commits. Because when you're coming at it from a pull request perspective, then everything kind of works out, right? So you don't necessarily need to reference an issue in every commit that you're doing, right? Because when you issue the pull request is going to be linked to it. Let's see how it goes. We can work that stuff out as we go, but yeah, we can just keep the conversation going as you try that stuff and figure out what the right kind of style approach is. But C4 already basically defines it. C4 lays down the at least the baseline for what to do.
Regarding the C4 process, because I missed the site. Also is it the c4process.com? Is that the?
No, it's unprotocols.org is where it lives. So if you search for unprotocols and C4, you'll go there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I give it a read.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, it's not so much.
No, it's like really short. But again, the background there, or sort of actually written after the fact, was this social architecture by Hinchins. It is basically a book that breaks down each one of the things that led to C4 and gives a background on it, and it's like pretty great stuff philosophically. How did this come together? So if ever you'd like to read, but
so it's a read recommendation. You enjoyed it?
Yeah, I haven't read the whole thing myself either, but it's also short. And I noticed from what I did read and then skimming the rest of it that there's a lot of value in there for understanding where this is coming from, and like the whole thrust of it, right? Like basically how do you create a development process that can scale to a planetary level, right? You see that with things like Bitcoin. You see that with things like 0MQ. So, anybody who spent like years of their life dedicated to distinguishing this stuff like Hinchins did is just somebody that I want to read his stuff, Yeah. He did an amazing job.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah. All right, man. Well, that was much longer than 15 or 20 minutes, but thanks.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
For sure. Okay. So talk to you
later. Bye.
Bye.